Hello, everyone. Welcome to Astrological Coffee Talk with Eric. And I actually have been drinking 2, 3 cups of coffee in a row. I won't be drinking any more coffee for the rest of the month, last couple of days, because my sleep's been broken. But anyway, tonight we're doing legendary rock and roll blues artist, the greatest guitarist of all time. And this is not from me. Eric Clapton and many others have said this. Mr. Jimi Hendrix, who was named Johnny, and then this and that. I mean, oh my God, I've got to like spill the beans before I forget, because there was like all this stuff that I researched. But we're going to get right to the chart because, whoa, 27 years, and you know he's part of Club 27. And I was just sharing with the ladies, Club 27 is Jimi Hendrix's idol, Robert Johnson, famous guitarist who supposedly sold his soul to the devil. And some of that story was in the movie Sinners. Remember when we did that coffee talk? The special coffee talk was fun. So you have Robert Johnson, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, and I'm sure there's more, but at least 6. And that's because Mars matures between 27 and 28. And then the Saturn, matures between 28 and a half, 29. So that can be an intense age in our lives. So let me kind of jump in, right? He's the Sag Sun and Rising, Cancer Moon in the 8th house, and, right, the chart ruler in Jupiter in 8th house. So this is really interesting. Oh my God, I don't even know where to jump at. Okay, let's start with his mom. Okay, his mother and father got together. Jimmy's the oldest, and of 4. His youngest brother is Leon, and then maybe I think it's 2 sisters, I believe. But he's the oldest of 4. But what's interesting, the mother was kind of like a party girl and didn't really, the father was away in the military and wasn't sure she had an affair if Jimmy was his or not. And so he got rid of the name Johnny and named him James, and then came to later on when he started to get whatever, Jimi Hendrix. So it's kind of interesting. But the father was into music. They were both kind of into the arts and different things. And what's wild, okay, so remember, we started the first house 0, so the 8th house is 7 years old. At 7 years old, right? Because remember, the 12th house is back here, so the 12th house is 11. So 7 years old, 8th house, the mom like kind of left the family. So the father was raising Jimmy and young Leon, and there's a lot of activations in this 8th house for Jimmy. What's really fascinating, you guys, he started like playing music and guitar and stuff like that. His father gave him a ukulele, and he started playing on that. And that was like around, I think 9 or 10. So, oh yeah, no, sorry, it was 10. So it was the 9th house. And he used to get bad whoopings when the father would come home from work, because he'd be listening to the blues, and then he was playing like around on his bed. He was playing the broom, so there'd be like little strings off the broom, because he'd be listening to music and trying to play the broom. So that's why the father had to buy him the ukulele. But then at 15, which, right, first house 12, 13, 14, 15, this 4th house will come into play again. At 15, he got his first guitar. Jimmy started different groups. From 15 on, it was all music. So 16, he had a little group. 17, another group. 18, he starts a group. Got in some different trouble, different girlfriends. But he started to play with a more established group when they were going to like nightclubs and this and that. And that's the Saturn Uranus. So he was the rebel, but he was with a group, and they were doing not churches, like back halls and different things, right? So with the other half. And what's so funny, Jimmy couldn't afford a left-handed guitar because they were more rare back then, and he's left-handed. So he had a right-handed guitar, so that's where his unique sound came, because he was like playing it almost backwards. So that's what kind of made him such a musical genius. And, look, Uranus and Gemini, right? So he'd be going through his Uranus return now. He was born in 1942, 1 year after my mom. So it's really fascinating with, this. And so this kind of explains him with the guitar in the other half and joining a more established group, the older guys. Then here he was getting into some trouble, and then he started to join the military, Jupiter, like traveling, and then at 20 years old, got into the military, had a military buddy who was playing, I think it was Billy Cox or somebody, and they were doing stuff together. Then, and it's so funny, right? Look at this, Leo, the government. So he got music. Leo, remember I told you, is the entertainer of the government. So he started playing music in the military and all this stuff, got in trouble, and he got discharged because he wanted to get out of there. So he lied and said he was gay, even though he had a girlfriend. So, and that's interesting because, oh wait, this Chiron womb, which is, oh my God, what is that? 20, can't see that so good. Is that 25, 26? Can you guys see that? It's not so good.
29.
Is it 29, the Chiron womb? No. Is that 29? Oh, I think it is
Yeah,
29.
yep.
So he didn't even make it to that. So, but at 11 was when I think some of the whoopings and stuff like that, but he got the guitar. So there was somewhere between 10, 11, he was getting the whoopings and stuff. But then the father was wanting to help him with his music and then helped him and stuff. So I think actually at 11, he got the ukulele here. That's what it was. 11, he got the ukulele, activated the Neptune. And then by 15, he got his first guitar. So I thought that was cool. So this will trip you out. So he only did 3 studio albums and 1 live album. Never won a Grammy. Definitely hit the billboards. So a lot of his infliction, right? So this Cancer Moon eighth house, it shows sudden events and different things with the mother, right? And not really being nurtured by the mom, right? And so this kind of, really explains that. And so this moon, Jimmy is very sensitive, but intuitive to music. So this moon in eighth house really was focused on his career, but Jimmy was just love struck. He did have a little, he's very skinny. His first girlfriend he met, that was before the military, but then after when he started playing music, right? So then his first, like real, I guess more official, like soiree into the music industry was here at 21 when he started doing like real big performances. And then he eventually had these different bands and wound up having Jimi Hendrix and the Experience here on the Ascendant at 24. Okay. So literally, like from the first album to the live album, he died. Oh my God, I just have to, I can't even hold this anymore. So peep this. He died at 27. That's the fourth house. He wasn't in his homeland, Pisces. He died in Kensington, England, in Europe, because he was, touring and then whatever, but died supposedly choking on his vomit after being with this new German girlfriend in a hotel. He was, but it turns out they're saying that he was forced some red wine and a bunch of pills, and the manager, who they're saying was a part of MI6, which is like our CIA, took out a life insurance policy, which they do on a lot of musical artists, especially these young rappers, and then they wind up killing them. Took out a life because Jimmy was so sporadic, and the music people they couldn't, and the manager they couldn't rely on him. He broke his guitar on stage. In 1969, he had a big show at Madison Square Garden that was like not a big success because like he was so high on drugs. By 25, he was like LSD, heroin. Before it was just drinking and marijuana, but then he got like by the second house, and he had 2 kids. That he had the daughter Tarika and then James at 25 and 27. So he had the kid, at 27 before he died. but he never got married. And the kids are from two different women, the daughter and the son, right? But okay, so Pete, so Pisces fourth house in a different land, right? Not in his homeland, but he died in September. You look at the opposite house, he died September 18th, 1970, 8 days after I was born. So that's wild, right? And so you see the Virgo, and so it's just kind of interesting how in these charts, and I don't know if you guys were here for like, this may have been a while ago before you guys came, but like when I did JFK and MLK and RFK, and I taught that in my astrology class, really fascinating. You can see, but sort of like Charlie Kirk and Jeffrey Epstein, deception and different things around the death. You will always look at the annual perfection. That's why I love annual perfections, you guys. I mean, you can even go in there and see, like Quintella when Chantel was born, like you can track sometimes the annual perfection. I did it with all of my boys and it's like right on point. But so, the fact that he died in September, but it was in a foreign land and it's connected to the fourth, 10th house thing, that's, angular houses, right? Pillar houses. But, it's just really sad. Now, backtracking, and then we'll kind of go to like the first house, but backtracking, he met Janis Joplin. There's rumors that they dated a little bit, and it could have just been like a week or two of just like, hot sex or whatever. But, that was here, South Node or whatever. But he had different girlfriends along the way, and one girlfriend broke his heart. And so she was considered to be the inspiration for the song Foxy Lady. So Purple Haze, Foxy Lady are his big hits. But then I think it was in Woodstock when he did the big performance with the national anthem that he's so famous for. And that was 69, but it was before, because remember, he was going to turn 28. So he died before his 28th birthday. So this is kind of 1970, but 1970 was really here for him because he was still, his birthday is, in December, November 27th, 1942. So it's really fascinating, but this series is interesting because this is Secret Sorrows, and Pisces is what? Addiction, drugs, escapism. But when you see the series here, and I wonder, let's see if this is squaring anything. Now, first house, Sag Sun, Juno, Venus, Mercury. When you have Venus on the ascendant, you can overindulge in things. And the Jupiter conjunct the moon, emotionally, he could have these emotional swings. Jimmy had issues with self-worth, and was always, very connected. I think since 21, he was hanging out with different gangs. Oh my God, they said he was so high one time, he got kidnapped by these little Italian thugs in Europe, and they were trying to hold him as ransom. And they said he was so high, he didn't even realize that he was kidnapped, and that his whatever wanted to get him back and threatened the guys that kidnapped him. And then he wound up beating him up because they wanted like money or like future sales of his albums. And the guy wound up beating him up, and then, they got Jimmy back. But he actually got kidnapped for, I think they said 3 days to a week. But he was so high, he was just like, whatever. He's like almost like oblivious to it. And it's just so unfortunate. But, the 60s and this and that, and he was in the scene. He really, what got his big break was after the military, and then he reconnected with his military friends like around 26 and 27. But he started these different groups, and it really kind of started around here with this midheaven. So between 21 and 22 is when he really started boom. And then the first official studio album was at 2024, first house. So he basically, from here, first house to the fourth house, did the 3 albums and a live album. Can you imagine that? Just literally 24, 25, 26, 27, 4 years, did all that. So 4 albums in 4 years, 3 studios and 1 live album. But Robert Johnson, who was the guitar player who supposedly, had these amazing guitar skills, but he sold his soul to the devil to get these guitar skills. That was Jimmy's idol. But he used to listen to B.B. King and Muddy Waters. Oh, this was the thing. Look, he had his big performance break with Little Richard at 10th house when he was 21. 10th house perfection. I thought that was fascinating. Now, I don't think Little Richard was a Virgo. You know, I can say, hey Siri, when was Little Richard born? I don't know if I turn this on. Hey Siri, when was Little Richard born?
Little Richard was born December 5th, 1932.
Okay, Sag too. So he had, okay, that's enough Siri. But he had favor, right, with the Venus and Mercury. He would could definitely connect with Sages, so that's interesting. But I think what's really fascinating is when you have the sun and the ascendant, you could, it can burn a relationship with the dad because of the Venus, or you could be very close with the dad. And when the sun is on the ascendant, it's got good directional strength because it's like being exalted in the first house in Aries. You know, even though the planetary joy is the ninth house and in the 10th house it overcomes the obstacles, it does very well in the first house, but you could be very self centered and arrogant the first 25 to 28 years. You know, and Jimmy, it's not that necessarily he was so arrogant because he kind of had issues not being nurtured from the mother, right? I mean, mom was like, you know, yeah, I had these babies, but I'm out of here. And I don't think the other kids were from the mom. I think it was just Leon and Jimmy. His other two siblings were, I think, from someone else, from the dad. So, you know, having the moon in Jupiter, he was very focused on his music and career, but very. So remember, the Cancer moon, not a death sentence. People are like, oh my God, they're so sensitive and moody. And that did affect him with his Jupiter optimism. You know what I mean? But I think it also kind of shows some of his intuitive gifts with the music. Now, he got kind of panned in some of the music magazines with his albums, but like, I think the first was maybe the first album sold like 5 million records. So he went more than platinum, right? And so he still, you know, did well, you know, even though the critics, now of course they loved him. They never won a Grammy, but he got a Lifetime Achievement Award Grammy in 1992. But this Lilith, okay, eighth house Lilith, right? So there's something that's really speaking to the mother was definitely like, you know, she was fast. She was out there, right? She was a harlot. And you know, it's like, I don't want my family. I'm just doing whatever, whatever. And we don't even know if Jimmy's dad was really his dad, right? And his name was Al, Big Al, Allen. And that was Jimmy's name, Johnny Allen. Uh, I forgot the, you know, the last name. Hendrix was the stage name. So it's just kind of, it was, I don't know if it was Washington or something, but so really interesting. He was born in Seattle, right? So that connects to the whole music grunge scene. So he was the first like big, you know, artist from Seattle and that whole stuff, you know. And when you have Mercury and Venus and the Sun, Venus connects you to the arts, culture, and entertainment. So when people have Venus on ascendant, they can be charming and pleasant and attractive, but Venus Sag is gonna make money like all over the world, and that's what Jimmy did. Venus would get him into being like, you know, the instruments and music, right? The Mars here though, and Scorpio, what'd that do? That got him into overspending on drugs, right? I mean, he went from alcohol to weed to LSD to ecstasy to then heroin. Um, you know, and how do I, the fourth house Pisces, this is almost trining the Ceres. So it's almost like him getting high made him feel nurtured and cared for in a way. But I think this is a wounding from like not having the mom. You know what I mean? Like he was just always looking for approval from women. Like he went from woman to woman to woman, but when the this one girl who was like, you know, bouncing from guy to guy, he was with her, I think at like 20, maybe at 23. Her name was Linda or something. She she really messed his head up. Like he wanted to be with her. And, it seems like as soon as he kind of got the record deals, he was just with women, So, I couldn't even find out like who the two different women were because they talked about the women he dated, but it was hard for me to find. I was watching this bio, thing, like which women were, for 25 and 27 were the kids. But in between that, he was still with other women. So one woman could have been pregnant, but then he was with another, you know what I mean? And then in between here at this age, he was with Janis Joplin, in Asbury Park and all that stuff. That scene in San Francisco. So it's just like, and Janice, I think she was the Aquarius or Capricorn. I can't remember. She was one of these. And so it's kind of interesting. But Jimmy also with the Aquarius South Node, came in like this genius, from the ukulele to the guitar, and he was kind of self-taught. And he started on the broom, which is a trip, It's like, this is like the greatest guitarist of all time, you know what I mean? And so what's fascinating to me too, though, is that Venus, remember Jupiter is expansion, so you can overdo things. So being conjunct Lilith and the moon, it was almost like trying to find out who he is as a man through sex, but looking for without trying to sound perverted, but still looking through sex from women, but almost like his mom. Do you know what I mean? Like he was like, I think he needed and wanted to be loved, but he also was so focused on his career and then the drugs that it was just like he was just bouncing all over. But Mercury, even though it's debilitated on the ascendant, what was Jimmy? The messenger. But he was the messenger of Venus, the music. And this placement can definitely get you into the military. Mars, Scorpio, 12th house, right? Going overseas, although he was stationed. And then he moved to Nashville, I think at 22 or 23. And then he made his connections, then came up to New York and other places. He was performing in the Village. And then he wound up, from Little Richard doing that little bit. Then he wound up connecting with Rick James and other people. You know what I mean? So like and then he had, oh my God, Linda McCartney, which I forgot her name was before. She like was the photographer that took a picture that he wanted on the album cover with him and his group, like looking like they were teaching children, but the label put a picture out that had it get banned at some places of like naked women on the cover. Can you imagine? Like, so, like, you know what I mean? So, like, he was also dealing with, there was just so much going on. And, it's anti-war, Vietnam, civil rights, all these different things. And then he also got with a woman that was Sam Cooke's ex-girlfriend. So, like, and this is all from 24 to 27, y'all. Like, I mean, I'm trying to, like, so, Venus on the first house can have you overindulge. And remember, Venus is in a sign ruled by Jupiter. Venus and Jupiter are not on the same team. So Venus and Saturn is not a bad placement, but it's not necessarily, you know what I mean? So, but, one thing I will say, when you see the Capricorn here, right, he was definitely kind of an old soul, mature, focused on his business. The third house with this Aquarius, his hand skills, the South Node is showing like where you have natural gifts and talents. Aquarius, right? People consider left-handed people kind of a little weird, bizarre, unique. It's more rare. That's this right here. Playing the guitar backwards, a right-handed guitar, and he's left-handed. That's the Aquarius South Node in third house. And that's so fascinating that he didn't even make it to the Chiron moon. That's, and this Leo North Node, part of fortune. And, he found favor when he would travel and perform and did well in Europe, but it was also his downfall. which is kind of just, it's always interesting. It's like these charts that kind of speak to you. Now, they did end the Pluto. This is your father's teaching. So this wounding, I don't know if dad would have denounced him. I don't know later once he got the deal and got bigger, like what was going on with him and his dad. That would have been interesting. But this is also 11 years old, so that could have been like some of the whoopings and then him getting a guitar. So good and bad. When you have the Leo of North Node, though, what do you want? You want the fame, you want the limelight, international success. Pluto, power, magnetic. The pain, trauma, and crises, but Pluto magnifies you. This is why, like Kim Kardashian's got Pluto in the 10th house. So sometimes when you have Pluto in the 10th house, you can have famous parents or some sort of power, or you are just so magnetic in public that you're like Tupac, all eyes on me, right? So you'll see that sometimes when people have Pluto in the 10th house. You know what I mean? They can get a lot of attention, good, bad, and indifferent. Sort of like Lilith. Pluto, you can attract narcissists. And being that he died in Europe, born in Seattle, and it may have been that he was overdosed by this manager because they had the $2 million life insurance policy on him, and this came out later on in books, I think written in 2007 or something. The guy admitted to it, but then he died, but he told somebody that he was the one that pushed the pills down Jimmy's throat that night. He was so high on drugs, and then they gave him some red wine, and he overdosed. So people say accidental, but then other people say no, it was intentional. And the German girlfriend, whether she left the room or they told her to shut up or whatever, you know what I mean? You just don't know. And you say girlfriend, I say girlfriend, but it was just maybe some girl he was just having sex with, right? So, rock star, that whole thing. But that's kind of interesting because this can show like, some intensity in a foreign land. But the part of fortune, the part of fortune. I think what's really fascinating though, Neptune, large groups and arenas, right? Neptune Libra, people love Jimmy, and I don't remember what year the movie came out, but remember the chart still lives after you die. So even though he's 27, there could be certain transits that activate different things. You could see this in Elvis Presley's chart, his daughter, that like even with a person dead, there's certain things that activate, and you could see, you know what I mean, based on inner perfection. Like you could probably see it like now, like different things coming out with Michael Jackson about his real son, Omar, and this and that. And, the other three kids, those clearly are not his biological kids, And so it's just really fascinating. And this Neptune Libra, I find a lot of people born in this generation, Neptune Libra, and that started in 42 because my mom and dad have Neptune Virgo, 32 and 41. But Neptune Libra started like 42 to 56. And then Scorpio, Neptune 56 to 70, which is what I have. And then 71 to 80, 83, 84 is Neptune Sag, But the one thing, this could show, right? He, I think probably had some low self-esteem, which they said, secret sorrows. Ceres is not just, it's your food and fashion, how you were nurtured and cared for. And it can show the secret sorrows. That secret sorrow there, that's about mom. Mom was drinking and partying and escaping. So I think in some ways, and him dying in the fourth house annual perfection, this is pretty telling. But I think there was foul play. Now let's see if this Saturn or Uranus is squaring it in the fourth house. But you guys can ask any questions. We'll still go around and some more, but if there's anything you see or you're interested or curious about. The fifth house, right, in terms of his creativities and obviously the children, first and second child, the Aries here. So his creativity, he was very independent, but he liked big bands for the different musical sounds. They said he was encouraged to go back to, remember I told you his people from the military, so it was just like him and two other guys, but he wanted to have, his band was Jimi Hendrix and the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Um, and that was, it was really like a, not even like an orchestra, but just like a bunch of people compared to like, him being with just two other artists or musicians. And I mean, for him to like get the deal and then kind of blow up from, in those 4 years, like it was just intense. Sag, Cap, Aquarius, Pisces, and then done. Now, meanwhile, he'd been playing since the fourth. I mean, he's been really doing since he got the guitar. But he started here at 16, fifth house, with having like his first kind of like experience of performing and like a little group. And then once he started here from the fifth house, Aries, he just kept playing, even when he went to the military, you know, all the way through. Now, Aries here, he was definitely a pioneer maverick. People still cover his music. They still, obviously, and I don't remember when Andre 3000 did the biopic of Jimmy. I didn't see it. I heard it wasn't so great, but maybe I'll try to go and watch it if it's on Netflix. Um, it's like an independent film. Taurus in the sixth house, his throat chakra, But it was interesting just how the music magazines were pretty critical of his albums, you know. But he was loved by the people like in that time, and even there were rumors that him and Janis Joplin were going to try to do stuff together, but she had her issues too, you know. And Jim Morrison, this is all 60, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70. I actually want to see Jim Morrison's chart because I found out that his father worked, I think, for the CIA. So it's kind of, it's interesting, And I don't know if you guys heard, old girl, I worked with her on 200 Cigarettes, Courtney Love. She was giving drugs to the artists in the music industry. Her father worked for like, I don't know if it was like some government or something, but he was like involved in drugs and she was like giving drugs to different artists. She did not have a positive spirit. I was only around her for a couple of minutes, but I could just feel the energy. And I'm sorry, Kurt Cobain, they took him out. I did his chart. I did him at a coffee talk years ago, maybe 2 years ago now. Part of me wants to release it, but I know in the video I don't even know if I still have it, but I definitely saw that there was a lot of deception and it was not a suicide for Kurt Cobain. And she tried to say that she recently some interview admitted that it may have been somebody else, but she doesn't know or think it was a suicide. But she's like, it wasn't me, you know. So anything now, the seventh house, right? Uranus, Saturn in Gemini. This is him in relation to the other half. So he would suddenly have different girlfriends. Saturn is the military. So that's actually kind of funny because you could see that right there with the Uranus conjunct Saturn, where he's like trying to get out of the military by saying that he was gay and he wasn't. Right? So that's kind of Uranus Saturn. That's actually kind of funny. You know what I mean? Like he's like, I got to get out of here. Let me just say, and that was a ninth house perfection at 20. But when I see this Saturn, Uranus in the seventh house, sometimes, it's not always, but sometimes Uranus in the seventh house, you could be in a same sex relationship or sudden relationships, sudden breakups, sudden marriage, you know what I mean? So, and that's what happened with this group. Like he was with them and they performed and then he was done. Okay. So, but when you have Gemini in Saturn, it can sometimes restrict your speech, give you speech delays, right? Alana has that in the second house, and she went to a speech pathologist when she was younger. But then what happens? You learn how to do it, and then you become Saturn Gemini, really disciplined with your hand skills, really disciplined with your writing, really disciplined with your communications. Saturn will make you, when you put in the hard work and discipline, will make you like the master of it. So where you struggle in the beginning, or you have lack or fear, stress, anxiety, or limitations, restrictions, and delays, you put in the hard work, what do you get? The rewards of Saturn, right? So, so like Alana, like she has like the good hand skills for making the products and ingredients, and she's a formulator. She's a great public speaker. Like she, was in like this little group thing, and she had to do like, not like toasting master, but like do like these speeches, and she like she killed it. So that's kind of what happens. So in some ways, this shows that the discipline with the guitar skills, but then it was, showing up. Because remember, sometimes I think we forget the seventh house is fame, sudden fame. He was like a comet, right? You know? So, any questions or anything you think about? Then we'll talk more about this eighth house because there's more in here. Let me zoom out.
Maybe Eric, when we get to the ninth house, it looks like he's got a lot of karmic placements in the ninth house because he's got North Node, Chiron, and Pluto. It's a
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying earlier, right? The Pluto would show his fame overseas, very magnetic, and he could attract narcissists. This Pluto ninth house could have been that manager that took out the life insurance policy on him. Because Pluto, Lilith both can attract jealousy too.
mm,
Remember Pluto's power, success, the underworld, right? Even those Italian mobster guys kidnapping him. That's a Pluto Leo thing. But remember the boomers, Pluto Leo, there is that like their parents, right, were coming from the depression. So a lot of Pluto Leo generation, they want to be seen. I want the limelight, the spotlight, the attention, right? If you notice, look at all these people who are in the late 70s and 80s that don't want to give up, to relinquish their power. Oprah, Trump, that's Pluto Libra, right?
mm,
I want to be in the limelight forever because Pluto is going to show that childhood pain, trauma, and crises. The parents were, obviously not for Trump. Fred Trump was, whatever, but powerful and successful and evil, helped funded the Nazis, Bush's father and Trump's father, Prescott Bush and Fred Trump. But so it's just fascinating that, I mean, he didn't even get, but what did he want? He wanted the attention from women because he was rejected from his mother, right? Here's that, the Lilith. Lilith in eighth house, that's pretty intense, and you could feel the rejection. This is kind of like, I don't know if he knew what loving a woman really was. He just knew about getting high and having sex with women, but that's not love, right? So that's the Lilith Jupiter. So his beliefs were like, oh, let me party, right? Anything hidden, secret, have fun. Jupiter, exaggeration, expansion, overindulging in the drugs, sex, and alcohol. That's the eighth house story. So people with Lilith in the eighth house, they can be sexually assaulted as children, but sometimes they just have to watch out for overindulging in this, in the drugs, sex, and alcohol. No matter what the sign is. But let alone when it's a water sign. When you have water signs in the like spiritual houses 4, 8, and 12, you could be more prone to being a psychic, but also, drugs, intent, a lot of sex or alcohol. I see that more with the water signs in those houses and the water houses, right? You see that a lot. you know. Oh, look. 28. Now, so it's more the Jupiter and the Lilith. So the Jupiter and the Lilith are kind of trining the Ceres in Pisces. Now, are they trining the Mars in Scorpio? 17. The Lilith is. Okay. So it's the male. That's a sex drive. So sex was like a drug. You see that? 15 and 17. Wow. That's fascinating. Because like in this short period of time, like, so he's got 2 kids with 2 different women. He's got multiple other girlfriends, maybe a month or 2-week fling with Janis Joplin and, and San Fran or whatever. You know what I mean? You're just like, well, and it's not, it's not judgment. It's just, this is just the reality. But a lot of that is the mother wounding. You see that? I think that's kind of deep. This is also Mars Scorpio moving abroad or overseas. That's where the end of his life. And so Mars Scorpio, that in a foreign land, even though the annual perfection is the 4th house, but it's trining it, this makes me think, this is where you're dealing with the manager. You're dealing with, people, and the end of the, in your chart is the end of your life, the 12th house. Mars Scorpio can be pretty intense. Actually, Oprah's got Mars Scorpio, but Mars Scorpio is like, it's like you could be the detective, you could be like the mob boss. I mean, you could just be a forensic scientist, an investigator, but it's at home, but it's like, Mars is at home in Aries and Scorpio and exalted in Capricorn. Capricorn, it's the CEO, the boss, starting your own business. Aries, it's like the athlete, but it's like impulsive. It's like, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do that. Oh, I want to be a firefighter. No, I want to join the military. Oh, I want to be a cop. Mars Scorpio, it's like, I'm going to investigate and research. This is him in his bedroom playing the guitar with the broom and being like, it's like the emotional alchemist. Because Mars is your willpower and drive, but it's also logistics. It's like logic. Right? I would equate my Mars in Virgo in 11th house is what helps me attack a birth chart, because Mars in Virgo is very heavy mental. Mars in Scorpio, it can also take you to the dark places, the occult, the mysteries, So that's pretty interesting too, Oh, well, honey, let me look at this, because the Saturn and Uranus. Now the Venus, we'll get into, what is that, 17 or 11? Oh no, that's just 7. So the Uranus Saturn, they're more opposing, 2 and 7. So look at that. So Saturn Venus, I wonder if some of these women were older, or it could restrict his ability to love and his self-worth. Oh my God, that's why he had low self-worth. Bingo. You see, the Saturn, so he's looking at the other half for the approval of like his own self-love. So he's talking to these women, Lilith, Jupiter, Cancer, trying to like reenact, like, will you love me? Will you nurture and care for me? My mommy didn't. Saturn, Uranus, opposing his Mercury, Sun, and Venus. That would give you a lot of issues with self-worth, but through his discipline, he'd be super talented as an artist. You're talking about Uranus opposing to Mercury. That's your hand skills. And the Venus, Saturn, that's deep. That's interesting. That's kind of sad. But you see what I'm saying with that? Like, that's like literal. he just they said that there was a poem found that they don't know if it was lyrics that seemed like it could have been like a suicide note, but I never believe, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, okay, I don't, you know what I mean? I don't think he was trying to commit suicide. He had 2 young kids. He was planning another tour, an album. You know what I mean? He had just gotten started. He loved music. Like, music was his first love when he got rejected from his mom. So that's how he was getting his self-worth. Right? If mom rejects you, this Venus Mercury, it's like he went and was like, I'm gonna find who I am through the guitar and the music. You see? So it's like, in some ways, he was trying to recreate and reestablish who he was, his self-worth, by being nurtured and cared for from a woman because he was not from his mother. That's kind of wild. And the series, it'd be interesting if this was a little bit lower. This could really be like a mutable T-square. You know. So, but definitely, you know, somebody who came on and just like, pow, you know, blew up on the scene and was, I mean, still revered to this day. You know, it's fascinating when you have someone so young, like even looking at Tupac's chart. I don't know if any of you guys were here for Tupac. That was really fascinating. I need to do like Notorious Big. I got to do Jim Morrison. I've done Kurt Cobain. But like, you know, when you only live 24, 25, 27 years, it's like you're not, it's like you just did 2 laps around the chart. And guess what? Each time you're lapping around, there's different aspects in transit too that are what happened to you here at 12 is going to be different at 24 and 36 because of the transits. And then that's where you can also look at the secondary progression chart because there's a whole nother layer, right? His Sag Sun, November 27th, that was early on, right? So he's the Sag Deacon, 4 degrees. So when he died at 27, that's 31. So he was in a progress chart of Capricorn Sun. And with his ascendant at 24, so at 6 years old, he was a Cap rising. So he would have been in his progress chart a Cap Sun and rising with the Cancer moon. Oh, that's deep. So when he died in the progress chart, you guys, the moon, it goes back at 27 and 54. So like right now, I'm 55, my progress chart, I'm still in my Cap moon. So imagine, so the sun and the ascendant were Capricorn, and the moon would be here in Cancer. Sun opposing moon when he died. And I think, 27 days later, oh man, let's just do this for fun, right? It's just us here. Let's advance it 27 days. So, okay, November 27th. Hey Siri, what's 27 days after November 27th, 1942?
It was Thursday, December 24th, 1942.
Ooh, Christmas Eve. Let's look at this real quick. Oh my God, I get to show you guys just the progress right there, and let's see. Let's really see if the Lilith was there and what else. Oh my God, this freaking mouse. December 24th. So that's fascinating. But see, this is what you guys can do when you want to even see different aspects of your life. When you go through major changes, and there's another level of doing this with zodiacal releasing, which is like, I'm still trying to master that. So I can't even teach it yet. You know what I mean? I don't teach anything that I don't like fully have. But look at this. So, like I said, Sun, Cap, Mercury, Venus too. There's the moon. And the Jupiter and the Lilith. So that's interesting because that's all opposing. This is when he died. So this gives you another layer. Kind of opposing the Mercury, but more so opposing the ascendant, which is your aura, physical appearance, outer mask. Oh, South Node, stuff being shoved down your throat. Right? Kind of like dying in a weird, bizarre way. And then I guess the fourth house is Aries now. Born alone, die alone, independent. That's interesting. So you just see how things shift, right? When you advance the chart certain amount of days, and this is like where he would have been, how his planets advanced. So this is what's going on for him. So that's interesting because the Lilith is in the seventh house. When you have Lilith in the seventh house, your partner, your girlfriend, there could be deception. The Lilith, it could be, oh, I'll bring him back to my hotel room, sleep with him, he'll get high. You guys come in and drug him. You see that? The other half, Lilith. Remember I told you, Lilith in the seventh house, not always, but it could be the partner cheating or having affairs or being a part of whatever. And Jupiter moon. So he's in a room trying to find love from a woman. And this is fame. That's crazy. Whew, it's kind of interesting. And this Uranus Saturn now being in the sixth house. Sudden events to your health, restrictions. Although Saturn in the sixth house, if you have Saturn in the sixth house in a natal birth chart, I'm sure you've heard me say it, it delays the death and you can live a longer than average life. But this is the progress chart. And you got all these events. Well, see if anything's opposing the Saturn Uranus. Oh, look at that. Oh, you can't make this up. In the end of life, now it's the Mars here. The Mars in the 12th house. Opposing the Saturn Uranus. Damn. That, especially the Saturn, that's pretty intense. So that's where there could be the hidden enemy, Sagittarius Mars. Mars is what? The weapon, the adversary. And isolated places in the hotel room, supposedly the bathtub. Saturn restricting your health. Sudden overdose. Uranus. Look at that. It's right there. That's crazy. Now let's see if we have something square again to see if we have an air T-square. Libra, what do you got for us? Oh, sugar. Oh God, the Neptune. Oh no, that's trining it. That's trining it. Uranus trine Neptune, though, that would speak to the musical gifts and talents. He was only going to get better. You see that? For his work and daily routine with his hands, relating to the people in a harmonious, peaceful way at the 10th house, his public image, he was only going to get better. But they felt that he was so unstable, he was worth more to them dead than alive. You see that right now, honey. So, honey, what would be. Oh, Virgo would be the square. Okay, nothing. And then. And then the Pisces. Eros is your love language. Deception through sex and love. With the Saturn and the Mars. Oh my God, that's kind of like, I think that they planted this woman, because this was just like some random, like this random German girl in the hotel. These guys come in, the drugs. Do you see that? Mars, Saturn, Eros? Wow. Yeah. Now I need to start doing this with more of the famous people's when in terms of when they die. Look at the progress chart of their age, because this is kind of wild, y'all. That is really speaking to like that was his weakness. They knew the drugs and the women. Wow. Any questions? Any thoughts? But you see in the progress chart how you see how you evolve. And that goes back to the Bible, book of Genesis. 1 day equals 1 year. So play with that at different pivotal points, like when either, just different events in your life. So whatever age it happened, go from that year and the date of your birthday and move it forward. Something happened really big in your life at age 30, move it 30 days forward and look at the progress chart. Because if you do that and the annual perfection, it's like literally being the astrological detective. It's going to show you so much. I mean, I just thought of this and I'm so glad I did, but like that's Mars, Saturn, Eros. And Mars or Saturn and Neptune are the biggest three things we look at with death. Now, remember with Laura Bruno on my podcast, with the near death, she saw a lot of Lilith and Chiron and in conjunctions, which is the 150-degree angle, not the 180 opposition. So like the first to the sixth house. But that's pretty fascinating. Oh, yeah. So I'm gonna move it back. But any question? Well, before I leave here, any thoughts or any questions before we wrap up? Because that's pretty. That's like pretty solid right there. That's the adversary. The Saturn is the MI6, right? Like CIA government. And Uranus, it's kind of like, sudden events, chaotic, like, just like, and you're dealing with the sixth house, your work, daily routine, co-workers, bosses. So this manager setting him up, hiring somebody or whatever, maybe he did it himself. And the girl, that's exactly that right there. Bingo, I got him. Nobody's hiding from me.
So you said for the progress chart, so if
Yeah.
something happened at age 24, you would move the chart.
24 days from the date of your birth.
Got it. Okay.
The same year. You're not changing the year. You saw the only thing I changed. That's why I asked Siri. And you always want to ask because, sometimes there's leap years and this and that. So you just, like when I said to Siri, like what's 27 days after the date of the birth? Because sometimes I try to do it on my own, but then like if you're near the end of the year, like that's why I want to ask. Because if it's just like, oh, June, July, you could just move it and you count the days and whatever. But when you're
Right.
getting into leap years and get to the end of the year, things can switch over, and then you don't know, especially if you're getting in the beginning, like February, if it's a 28 or 29 days. So sometimes you just want to ask Siri because it will tell you, how many days and then how many days to move it forward.
Got it. Okay.
Especially if you were like born and you're like a Pisces or Aquarius, like you and Marae, like it could literally be you want to check with the Siri or Google because it could be very much, that could have been a 29th day year, or you just don't know. But that's like kind of wow. It's very clear, and but that Neptune 10th house, that's the creativity. But that's, in public, the drugs. Imagine being kidnapped for a couple of days and you so high and they're holding you for ransom. You're like, oh, hey, I'm just hanging out with some new friends. That's some shit. Whew. I don't know if I ever been that high. God knows I partied, pretty hard back in the day, but damn. Ain't nobody taking me nowhere. That's crazy. Interesting time. Bye, you guys.
Bye for
Bye.
time.
I'll hopefully see you Saturday and Sunday in the chats or whatever. And I'll I think the 19th, and then the next tribe meeting I think is like January 9th or something. I think that's a Friday. So you can come in. I'm done. All right, you guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye. This was fun.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
The moon is how I respond and react. Intuitive feelings absorbing the facts. The moon is me, my body, health, and family.
I'm howling at the moon, 'cause I don't wanna be the one.
The moon is connected to my emotion. The moon is connected to